how to make different backgrounds in Blender without adding any geometry or lights. Hello everyone, how are you? Today I'll show you how to make all of these procedural backgrounds that don't affect the lighting of your project, so you don't have to worry about tweaking your light setup. You can download the Blend file for free to get all the nodes I'll be showing you today. More details about the Blend file at the end of this video. I will be teaching you all these different procedural backgrounds. You can check the timestamps for each one. I will tell you how to make your backgrounds not to affect the lighting at the end of the video. Let's begin. Okay, so here I have my 3D model. I will show you how I made this Toon ice cream next week. This is my resolution since I wanted a square image, but the usual 1920 by 1080 will do just fine, or any resolution you choose. We'll be working in camera view mode, so you need to set up your camera. I am in Eevee, but Cycles will do too. And I chose my color management to Filmic, but if you'd like your colors to pop a bit more, you can change it to standard. Let's go to the shading tab. Let's enable the lights and the world color and go to camera view. What will change is the world color, so go to world, and here we should have a background node, which is the default. The first background I'll show you is a gradient background. Let's add a color ramp node, and now let's add a texture coordinate and a mapping node. You can select the color ramp node and press Ctrl T if you have the node wrangle add-on enabled, or simply add the nodes individually. We don't need this image texture node. Connect the window input to the mapping node. And now we already see something in the background, but I want to tweak the placement. You can move this color stop, and you can also change the mapping values. You can rotate it to make the gradient straight, and you can also change the interpolation mode. And now the gradient is too big, we can't see both of the colors, but we can scale it in the mapping node. Let's change the colors. And the diagonal gradient looks good too. Let's tweak the colors a bit more. Now for the second background, which is a sphere-shaped gradient, we just need to add a gradient texture node and change it to spherical. I'm gonna reset the mapping node by selecting it and pressing the backspace. We can place the sphere at the center. And change the color ramp to make the center bigger or smaller, more or less blended. You can also scale it in the mapping node. Now it's very tiny, let's undo this, and we can also change only one axis so the sphere looks more like an oval, for example. Now let's make this abstract cloud-looking background with all these variations. Delete this gradient texture and add a mask grade texture node. These look like snowflakes, and we can make them smaller or bigger. And if you move this color stop, these cloud-looking shapes start appearing. Let's change the values. And to add a gradient, duplicate all these nodes. We don't need this Musgrave texture node. And to combine the shapes and the gradient we are about to make, we need a mix shader node. And now if you change the color of this color ramp, it adds a gradient on top of the clouds. And of course, you can change the Musgrave texture node settings to get different shapes. Now let's make these striped backgrounds. Delete all these nodes from the previous background. And delete the Musgrave texture node as well. Add a wave texture node. You can make the stripes smaller or bigger. And you can distort them as well. And you can also change the values in the mapping node. If you like sharper stripes, you can change the color ramp to constant. I used this technique for making this Hilda-inspired background by adding several color stops. I'll leave the link for that video in the description. For making these radial lines, just add a gradient texture node. I'm gonna reset the mapping node, and now you can take the stripes to the center. To make the lines a bit blurry, change the interpolation mode. Let's reset the wave texture node and change the scale. To make the stripes a bit blurrier, add a mix node and change it to color. And set the blending mode to color dodge. See the difference when I mute this node? And for making the stripes a bit thicker, duplicate this mix node and set the blending mode to color burn. And this is how it looks with and without it. And just like we did with the cloud-looking background, we could add a gradient to these stripes by adding another color ramp and connecting it using a mix shader node. And since we have another mapping node connected to the color ramp only, you can make the gradient bigger or move it, without changing the stripes because those have their own mapping node. To add different elements on top of these stripes, add a Voronoi texture node connected by the color output socket. You can make this sort of pixels. I'm gonna reset the mapping node, and if you connect the Voronoi texture node from the distant socket instead, you'll get dots or a half-tone pattern. We could tell Blender to only put the dots in a portion like there's a mask. For that, let's add a mix node and change it to color. Connect the Voronoi texture node to the V socket. Duplicate the mapping node. Connect the texture coordinate node to the mapping node and add a gradient texture node. Change it to spherical and connect it to the mix node. As you can see, now the half-tone dots don't appear in the entire image. We can move the spherical mask we've created, but first I'm gonna scale it since it's too big. Here I can see the sphere shape, and now let's move it. This background took several nodes, so let's remember what each group of nodes does. Here we have the spherical lines. These nodes correspond to the dots, and these correspond to the spherical mask for the dots. And we used a mix node for combining all these elements. And we also used a mix shader node for plugging all the elements into the world output node. And you can use the same principle for making other shapes or for adding dots to the shapes we did previously, for example. You can even experiment with nodes we haven't used today. Now it's time for the final background. Let's make some plate-looking background. Delete all of these. I'm gonna separate these two mix nodes for later. Delete the gradient texture node, reset the wave texture and the two mix nodes. Duplicate the wave texture node and change the direction to Y. Connect the mapping node. Add a math node. Set it to greater than. Duplicate it and connect the second wave texture node to the second math node. And now let's use the mix node we already have. Set it to color. You can distort it, scale it. And if you move the color stop in the color ramp node, the lines will appear to create a plate pattern. You can scale it in the mapping node as well. Now these are sharp lines, so what if you wanted to make them a bit imperfect? Take the other mix node, set it to color, and set the blending mode to linear light. If you enable the Node Wrangle add-on, press Shift and right-click to connect these two, and add the mix node. add a noise texture node and connect it to the mapping node and to the mix node. Let's change the values. And now by lowering the mix node, we can control how imperfect it is. Let's see it with and without imperfections. Now, how to make your background not to affect the lighting of your object. This is the blend file with all the backgrounds I showed you today. As you can see, if I change the color, the light in the cube changes. What we need to do is separate the background color from the light. For that, let's add another background node. And I'm gonna choose the default world color, which is this gray color. Add a light path node and add a mix shader node. Connect the background to the mix shader, connect the light path to the mix shader's factor socket, and connect the other background node to the mix shader node. You could choose black or even another color if you wanted your world color to have some influence on the lighting, but the procedural background won't affect the lighting of your object even if you change its color or settings. And you can connect any other of the backgrounds we made today using the same nodes. Okay, now let's have a look at the blend file. You can download it for free and you'll find different colors and settings than what I did today, but they are the same nodes. You'll probably need to tweak the settings depending on the placement of the camera in your project. Everything is labeled and organized. Here we have the nodes that I just showed you to separate the background and the light. Then we have the gradient background, the spherical gradient, the abstract clouds with a gradient, and remember you can unplug the gradient, for example, if you only wanted these clouds without the gradient. Then we have the stripes, and here we have the spiral lines with dots. And remember, you could only use the spiral lines without the dots as well. And finally, the plate background. And you could unplug these nodes to get sharp lines. And if you wanted to take the nodes out of the frame, you just need to select them, right-click and remove from frame. If you'd like to see each node group in detail, feel free to check out my ArtStation post where you'll find high-resolution screenshots and the color codes I used in today's video. And that's it for today's video. I hope you used this technique in your 3D renders. Thanks for watching and see you in the next one. Bye!